This is Fight Fans Radio.
Let's get ready to rumble! Oh my God! Unbelievable!
Down goes Frazier! Down goes Frazier!
It's time! You're listening to New Mexico's only mixed martial arts and boxing podcast, The Low Blow, on AdamCombatSports.com and Fight Fans Radio. It is episode 127 of The Low Blow. I am Justin Goodrum, joined by Jorge Hernandez and Will McClary. What's up, guys?
Good evening, man.
What's going on, gentlemen?
Nothing much. We are live on FightFansRadio.com. We're also hosted on USCombatSports.com and SouthwestFight.com. Today we have a special guest, Isaac Valley Flag, who's going to be taking on East Edwards at UFC 156. He's scheduled to join us around 8:20 Mountain Time, so check out for that. Hopefully he'll talk about making that transition from Strikeforce to the UFC, along with some other stuff concerning his fight career. We'll also recap a busy day in combat sports, specifically Saturday, with Vitor Belfort forcing all of us to pretty much eat crow by knocking the crap out of Michael Bisping. We'll talk about Mikey Garcia dominating Orlando Salido, and we'll talk about a huge weekend for Jackson's MMA fighters on the national scene. As you know, John Dawson and also Guida. And there's also Donald Cerrone. All of them are going to be either on the FX portion or on the national television portion of the UFC on Fox. So really a big, big Saturday for them. As always, if you disagree or if you agree with our thoughts, please send them to @TheLowBlow, our Twitter account. Also through email through lowblow505@gmail.com. We're also available through the Stitcher Radio app and iTunes. So please check us out. Also check out Fight Fans Radio through Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, or Ustream. Just type in Fight Fans Radio. That'll give you access to our show along with the rest of the Fight Fans Radio family. So let's get into our standing 8 count while we wait for our guests, guys. And I guess I'll start it off. Our standing 8 count is our big news stories of the week concerning boxing and mixed martial arts. And really, I think the big story this week, guys, has to be the news reported. I think, trying to find out, it was Sports Media Watch reported it first, that Field TV, along with the Speed Channel, will be converted to Fox Sports 1 and Fox Sports 2. Basically, Fox Sports 1 will probably be ESPN, and Fox Sports 2 will be ESPN 2. It seems like that will start to happen around August, according to the Sports Business Journal, as they reported on Monday. So this is a pretty big deal. Again, UFC viewers are going to be pretty confused again, as a lot of the UFC content is going to be moved to another network, because they also announced that FX will not be carrying sports. So if you're an FX watcher, you might have noticed within the last couple of years, you might have seen a Champions League game, college football, the UFC, of course. So now it looks like FX will be an entertainment channel only. So very interesting news on that front. And Jorge, you have some news about Eddie Alvarez. Looks like he's going to court with Bellator to see if he can make his UFC debut.
Yeah, it looks like Eddie Alvarez and Bellator headed to court Friday as a potential UFC 159 fight looms for the ex-champ. So, it's no secret that these guys have been going at it. Contracts between this guy. Is this guy that important, you think, to the UFC, or why is the UFC doing this, Jay?
Well, the UFC always goes after the best talent. Yeah. And I think what Dana White said, and it's what is true, Viacom owns Bellator, and what Dana White said, if you believe him, they have $5 billion in cash, whatever that means. So I guess in theory, they can pay Eddie Alvarez whatever he wants. So it just seems to me that Bellator, if they really wanted him, I guess they could give him a really big contract, but it seems like they kind of want to keep him but not pay him too much. So this is the best way to do it. Personally, I don't want to go on a long rant, but I would just say the UFC has far more positives in terms of Eddie Alvarez in the long term than Bellator, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. And
then, of course, Alvarez's lawyers will, ask a federal judge to try to free him from Bellator so he can accept an offer to fight as a co-main event April 27th on the pay-per-view card. And what pay-per-view card? Of course, the one most fans are looking forward to, the Jones and a Chael Sonnen fight. So, should be a pretty interesting card if he ends up making it on there.
Yeah, no doubt. And Will, you have some news about Nodito Donaire and Abner Mares.
Yes, the possibilities are still here. This is the fight that everybody wants, so the deal is not off the table. We know Donaire is definitely going to make his appearance. He will be fighting on April 13th. Hopefully it is against Mares. We've been talking about this in terms of matchups with boxing. Hopefully they can keep it going as they did in 2012 and make some fights that really matter. And then what's interesting in here is Bob Arum again. And we know that, in terms of the Mayweather and the Pacquiao fight, that he was a problem. Once again, it seems to be a dispute between promoters, the Golden Boy and Top Rank, in terms of making this fight happen at 122 pounds. So I really hope the promoters do not get in the way of making a great fight like this happen. So we'll have to wait and see. Hopefully they can finish the deal soon, and this will be the fight that people are really looking forward to. So this is the fight that Donaire really needs to, I believe, in terms to really catapult him back into superstardom. I mean, he got, of course, the Fighter of the Year, but this will really solidify that if they can go ahead and make this fight happen.
Mm-hmm. Looks like Matt Hughes has officially retired. Pretty much Matt Hughes was kicking and screaming to get another fight with the UFC, but Dana White announced his official retirement today. Matt Hughes will now serve as the Vice President of Athlete Development and Government Relations. I guess you can take that as an official title, or you can just take that as kind of a BS title where, Dana White just gave Matt Hughes a job for all of his hard work over the UFC over the years. But nevertheless, I think if Matt Hughes really takes his position seriously, he could be an asset to the UFC going forward. So I think he's had a fantastic career. I think, as years go by, I just hope he doesn't get forgotten, because Matt Hughes put on some of the most dramatic performances in not only UFC history, but also in MMA history. So be interesting to see how he takes his position. Matt Hughes he's a straight shooter. He doesn't BS anything. He's pretty honest. So I think he'll be an asset to what the UFC has to offer.
And also in other news, pretty intriguing matchups. Paul Malignaggi and Andre Bertho is a possible for April 27th, along with the Marcos Maidana against Lucas Matisse, which is a decent-looking fight. And that's, of course, if Lucas Matisse wins his fight with Mike Dallas Jr. here pretty soon, here this weekend. Apparently, Paul Malignaggi didn't want to fight Shane Mosley. None of us wanted him to fight Shane Mosley. So that fight has been taken off the table. Also, Malignaggi says he would obviously be open to fight Marcos Maidana, and that would be a pretty good fight for him. Richard Schaefer, of course, Golden Boy Promotion CEO, told Boxing Scene that he's got ideas for those two fights to happen in Brooklyn, in the Barclays Center, a pretty nice venue. Then they're actually putting pretty good cards there on both HBO and Showtime. So Malignaggi would end up defending that WBA welterweight title that he won last year in Eastern Europe in a huge upset. So definitely looking forward to that one. But we got to see if Lucas Matisse gets past Mike Dallas Jr. To fight Marcos Maidana, and I don't think he's going to have any trouble getting past either guy, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Let's get to 3 rounds, guys. 3 rounds is our weekly rant. It's what we're burning on, either what's really angering us or what's really, it could be really positive. So who wants to go first this week, guys?
I can go first on this one. I don't know if you guys heard the news, but it's news locally. I don't know if you want to treat it as huge news or as, kind of like a hype-up news. But the WBC ordered yesterday Holly Holm and Cecilia Brækhus to fight in a mega fight. Why it's important? Well, because it's a big sanctioning body asking these women to fight. They cannot force these 2 women to fight. Let's keep that in mind. The WBC has awarded this fight the distinction of the diamond belt, which just means that you're the super duper champion in the welterweight class. Okay. So it's unreal, and it's just the WBC can't do it. I mean, I don't remember the last time that Holly Holm has ever even held a WBC title. So they can't really mandate this. Holly Holm technically right now doesn't even have a weight class because her last fight was at light welterweight. Her fight before that was against Anne-Sophie Matisse at welterweight. So it's just very interesting that they're throwing it out there. And as far as the WBC, I'm looking at Holly Holm's record now, and she hasn't had a WBC belt since, it looks like 2008, actually. So it's just the hype, just to build it up. There was a mention, I believe, by Holly Holm's camp that she would be, her next fight would possibly be in MMA. And there's some rumblings out there that, maybe on the Bellator card. Who knows?
Really?
If they'd end up happening next month. But, those are just rumors. It's not nothing
what
serious
weight class would that
as
be?
of right now. She'd probably end up fighting. I mean, I think she could fight at 135, man.
Because really, to my knowledge, and Erica, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think Bellator has too much of a deep weight class in a 135. I think their strength is 125. I I always thought, especially with the relationships that Invicta has with Jodie Escobar and Michelle Watterson, I think Holly Holm would be a perfect fit there, especially if they need, a big name. I mean, that'd be perfect for Invicta, especially since they're fighting in California and that's their next card is going to be there. So that's interesting, yeah.
So, yeah, and I mean, what do you guys think of that? I mean, I guess we can quickly talk about this. The WBC, I guess, acting like they can force this. I mean, they're not an overall governing body. It's not the commissioner and the NBA saying, all right, you guys play each other.
Well, I'll go first. One question I do is, so the belt that's going to be on the line, is it going to look like the WWE title with the diamonds all over it? Since they're fighting for the diamond title, I mean,
it might even have a spinner, kind of like the old John Cena belt, kind of did. So, I mean, it'd be pretty interesting to see if that in fact were the case. But it's just really interesting. I mean, they don't need this diamond belt. Cecilia Brækhus already has the WBA, WBO, and WBC titles at the welterweight level. None of those are diamond belts. Those are regular old belts. So, I mean, please, they don't need a diamond belt for this. Unless you're going to give them extra money to try to make this fight happen, then by all means, feel free to do it. But I just think something's going on here, and I think that someone is trying to hype something up, whether it's the WBC looking out for their own agenda, or maybe Holly Holm to get her name out there. Sure. Maybe even Cecilia Brækhus, or it's possible that a fight is coming between these two. But I mean, don't rub it in our faces like that. I mean, come on, we're not that dumb.
I have another question before you go, Will. I saw a Facebook post on Holly Holm saying that she has some plans she wants to announce fairly soon. Her taking this MMA bout, especially with this fight with Brækhus being a dream fight for her and a goal for her and a fight that everybody wants to see. Why this MMA bout kind of came out of nowhere? Do you know, without revealing your source, is this pretty solid rumors or just kind of like conjecture out there, people just talking?
These are people just talking. I mean, It's around the gym. It's like, oh, well, what big name could they get on this card? Holly Holm has no other big fight lined up except Cecilia Brækhus, and no one thinks that's going to happen. So that's why people think Holly Holm took all of last year off from MMA. So that's why people think, the next most interesting thing that she can do is fight in an MMA fight. I mean, how huge would that be, though? I mean, there are rumors, but nonetheless, if she were to be on Bellator, I mean, she's obviously not going to fight a huge name. But, I mean, it'd be awesome to have, obviously, besides Carlos Condit, our best, and Austin Trout, obviously, our best athlete out of the state perform in Bellator.
Well, looking at the website, they don't have a 135-pound fighter on here. So I'm just wondering, who would she fight?
I have no idea. They might bring someone over.
They have talented fighters on. I don't know why they make one fight out of their weight division.
Yeah.
I mean, Invicta seems the perfect match. They have plenty of 135-pound fighters. And really, with the UFC, they're kind of slacking with, creating women's fights. I mean, honestly, if you create some hype there with Holly Holm versus somebody, you can honestly steal the UFC's thunder there. So we'll just have to see what happens.
Yeah, so it's pretty interesting to see. I mean, hopefully we'll see that. I'm not sure what will exactly happen, but I think it was the Albuquerque Journal though that mentioned something about a hopeful Ronda Rousey Holly Holm fight later on in the future. I mean, that won't happen for another year or two.
Yeah,
if it ever does happen.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Will, do you want to go next, or I'll go? I'll take.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, just real quickly, it's going to be just positive. I caught the beginning, the first premiere episode of The Ultimate Fighter, as myself and Erica pretty much wrapped on the show. I don't really count myself in kind of the viewing pool because, I watch terrible reality shows. So, I mean, my punishment, I think my kind of taking of like horrible TV is pretty high. My pain tolerance is pretty high. But watching this new episode of The Ultimate Fighter, I was really impressed. Subtle changes. There weren't anything super dramatic, but just the way it was shot, the way even they interviewed Dana White, just seemed like they're taking the show way more seriously than before. It seemed like the show was just totally fresh, just adding the loved ones in the crowd watching their fighters try to get into the house was a really big change. I think really helped the premiere episode. Now, this is episode 1. The rest of the season could suck, but so far so good, and I was really impressed.
Yeah, I guess mine would be just like the Paulie Malignaggi and like Sugar Shane Mosley. Of course, I wasn't looking forward to that fight either, But just, the fact, like, this is one of, my 3 rounds I mentioned before in terms of Sugar Shane Mosley returning to the ring, which you really shouldn't. But in terms of a potential opponent that Malignaggi faces and Marcos Mondana, I mean, no. I mean, that fight is not going to be entertaining at all if it were to happen, simply for the fact that, for one, Marcos Mondana, as soon as he catches Paulie, I think he's going to be out of there. And I don't think that, Marcos Mondana, he's a brawler. So what we're probably going to see in that fight is probably hitting and running. I don't know any other way to say it. So, I just don't see that as being very entertaining. The fight against Andre Berto, I mean, to me, it's really not that much better. I mean, if Berto beat Paulie, I mean, where's this going to put him? I don't think this is going to be close to putting him back at where he was before losing to Guerrero. So, I mean, I'm not really feeling these matchups in terms of Paulie and Sugar Shane and what they're throwing in terms of some of these fighters who can really be exciting, like, Marcus Mondana facing off against Matisse versus Berto. I just feel like Paulie's kind of messing up these great bangers that we could possibly have. I mean, Paulie, he's a decent fighter, but in terms of these guys are really heavy hitters, and I know for sure that Paulie is not going to, for a second or for a round, be willing to trade with these guys. He's gonna stick and move. He might get some good boxing in there, but I think both of them will prove for a boring fight.
Just go over some breaking news real quickly. If you're listening to us live on Fight Fans Radio, you're probably watching the Bellator fights that's happening right now. Jackson's fighter Hunter Tucker was supposed to fight on the prelims. His fight got bumped to after the main event. So I think last week, it was Seth Pizzelli. It happened to him. His fight got bumped after the main event. I think the same thing's going to happen to Hunter Tucker. So I think look for that around, I don't know, if I had to guess, 9:45 Mountain Time. Don't quote me on that. But I think last week they ran a little bit over too. But his fight is going to happen. It's just going to be after the main event concerning tonight's Bellator. So check that out if you're into the Jackson's fighters.
Yeah, and again, a huge prospect out of that Jackson's gym. So definitely good to see him on the national scale.
Yeah, no doubt. I think it's a blessing in disguise. He gets to fight on national TV instead of the internet. So it's a huge get. Let's talk about UFC on FX. Happened this weekend, this Saturday at Sao Paulo, Brazil. I think you and me, Jorge, picked Bisping pretty easily to dominate Vitor Belfort. Both were wrong dramatically. A dominating performance by Belfort, just a unbelievable head kick, ending in a TKO in round 2 at 127. Just pretty much destroys any kind of welterweight plans. From Chris Weidman to Tim Bosch, you go down the line, there's just been one kind of disaster after another. In terms of Vitor Belfort specifically, does he actually have a shot at challenging for the middleweight title again? I mean, is he realistically 2 wins away? Because you look at other guys, is Hector Lombard really going to beat Yushin Okami? As much as I dislike Okami as a fighter, in terms of a style matchup, that's a bad style matchup for Hector Lombard. I mean, if Belfort can just get 2 more wins or even 1 more win, I think you can kind of justify Belfort getting another title shot considering how the first one did very well in Brazil. What do you think?
I think so, too. And also, the fight didn't last very long, but Vitor Belfort was not scared of Anderson Silva, and he had pretty good movement up to that point where he caught a, crane kick straight to the mug, man. So I would actually like to see that. And, we'll see a Vitor Belfort a little more cautious and a little smarter, I think, this time around if it were ever to happen. But I definitely think so. He pulls off 1 or 2 more victories. He's definitely in line, and I think he should be and has every right to be in line for another title shot. As far as Anderson Silva, I mean, what's his deal with the UFC? Does he actually have a contract with them, man?
Rumor is he has to sign a deal. I wouldn't really freak out. Josh Gross reported that. I think the night that the fights were happening, I think he's just waiting for an opponent to sign a deal. What Dana White said today, he's going to let the cat out of the bag that he's trying to set up a fight between Vitor Belfort and Strikeforce middleweight champion Luke Rockhold.
I like that. I love that.
Yeah, he mentioned that. So he's kind of like, media got me to say this, and now the fight's not going to happen. So hopefully that fight does happen. He said that during the media scrum today, which is on MMAfighting.com if you want to check that out on YouTube. So we'll see what happens. But, to to me, I'm almost like just give Rockhold the title shot. He has a belt. He can hype title fights up, and I don't think there's really a really exciting matchup for Anderson besides the GSP bout. I think Anderson's really into that. I think even though hardcore MMA fans are kind of against that fight, I think that fight still does huge business, and from a pay-per-view perspective, I think that sounds appealing to Anderson. This card has some interesting decisions with it. CB Dollaway defeated Daniel Safratine via split decision. Really exciting fight. Gabriel Gonzaga defeated Ben Rothwell via submission guillotine choke round 2. Also, this guy is in the beginning, in the first fight of the night, the guy with the hardest name to spell, Khalib. I can't even say his last name.
That's all you, Jay.
Nurmagomedov, I guess, defeated Thiago Tavares. His swinging punches away just totally overwhelmed Tavares and knocked him out in the first round, minute 155. Those Russian names are a killer. But anything that appealed to you? I know there's a controversial decision on the undercard. There is some acting job done by Pedro Nombre on the undercard. Dana White actually cut him because of it. Anything that stood out to you, either the Field TV or FX card?
I guess just to see Edson Barbosa come back with the victory, especially losing surprisingly to Jamie Varner in his last fight. I think that's what surprised me the most. And then that co-main event fight was actually pretty good. But I think the biggest surprise is Vitor Belfort. He surprised the hell out of me, man. I was actually happy to see him win because he's, like I said before, he's one of my all-time favorites. But I didn't think he actually had enough to win this fight. So we'll definitely see what this actually turns out for him, and if the fight with Luke Rockhold happens, and then hopefully. But to me, that was the biggest surprise and the thing that stood out the most out of the card. Like you said, it wasn't too loaded. It was just something to hold us down for a little bit. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, in terms of the ratings perspective, the ratings were really high for this card. The ratings were pretty good for Ultimate Fighter, its first episode. So, once, the announcement came that they're kind of moving everything to this new Fox Sports 1 network, it's kind of like, they're starting to find a groove on FX. If the ratings continue to be this high, we'll have to see what happens with those plans. So, really, nothing official from Fox has been announced for this network move, but certainly the source was pretty credible. So, we'll see what happens. I want to recap the HBO boxing. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about this. I kind of want to get to Mikey Garcia totally dominating Orlando Salido. Before we get into round 8 and the headbutt, were you guys surprised at all how easily Mikey Garcia totally dominated Salido? It just seemed like he overwhelmed him. Like, it just seemed totally kind of like a mismatch. Like, I totally thought this fight was going to be way closer, but instead, Garcia totally dominated Salido. Can you just talk about Garcia's dominance first before we get to the headbutt?
I don't know. Let me ask you right away, Will.
We can't wait. We're so hyped because it was so impressive, man. I was surprised. I thought it was going to be a much tougher fight for Mikey Garcia, and he just made it look like a cakewalk, man. He handled Salido perfectly. I mean, I think Salido, I don't think that he was really hurting Salido. I mean, of course, his face would speak otherwise as it was swelling, but as you know, fighters bleed, they bruise. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're really hurt. And I think Salido, he was just so frustrated. He couldn't. It looked like on the expression on his face, he couldn't believe that this was happening. I mean, you can see. I mean, he just is not the type of guy that you would expect to be going down multiple times. But Mikey Garcia, I mean, even when I was looking at the fight again, I was looking at his punches, and I was like, wow, were his punches really that powerful? It was just the precision punching that he had, and just the timing of the punches was absolutely perfect. So I was just really impressed with Garcia. I mean, he did it all in that fight. I mean, he was really prepared to stand his ground and, to fight flat-footed as well as on his toes. And he just did a beautiful job. I mean, I think it would see a rematch even on his best night. I don't think Salido is ready for that kid. That kid, his timing is too good, and I have to admit, he's a much better boxer than I anticipated against the type of pressure fighter that Salido is. Salido was the champion too, mind you, and it just really looked like he was the challenger that night. That definitely wasn't successful.
You wouldn't have known that was Mikey Garcia's first title fight for an actual world championship. The guy was so composed, but as I mentioned in the telecast, and as most people who has followed his career know, his brother, Robert Garcia, world-renowned trainer, he he himself was a world champion. They were all together on the ride with Fernando Vargas during his rise as well. So they saw those championships. And then obviously, just recently, another guy from that stable, Brandon Rios. So in the HBO telecast, the guys on there talked about this, but it's almost as if they expected for him to be champion. All right, now you're here. Now this is where the real work starts. And you could actually tell how well he was composed and how crisp his punches were. I mean, for him to knock him down twice in the first round and then a couple more times in 3 and 4, just with these clean punches, it was just amazing. And I mean, amazingly now he's the guy to beat at that weight class. I mean, they were showing the graphic of the other fighters: Johnny Gonzalez, Daniel Ponce de Leon, Orlando Salido, Chris John. Chris John's never going to leave Asia. I don't think so. I mean, Mikey Garcia, and it was surprising to me that he called Yorkis Gamboa out. And I think he would beat Yorkis Gamboa just because of the questionable jaw that guy has.
Oh yeah, definitely. I totally agree that he would beat Gamboa. I mean, Gamboa definitely got tremendous speed and power, but Salido, not so much the speed, but he definitely had decent power. He was a tough fighter, and I told you before with Gamboa. I mean, as soon as he meets a fighter, a boxer puncher, he's gonna be in trouble. Yep. And Mikey Garcia is just that.
Yeah.
So no contest there. Can we talk about the headbutt now?
Yes. Just to set the scene, pretty much Garcia's dominating it. Round 8 comes. I don't know. It looked awfully suspicious, the headbutt, but I don't understand the motivation. It's kind of like the Manta Ateo situation. Like, I think it's suspicious. Yeah, he got duped by hopes. So here it's like, he seems like to me like the headbutt was malicious, but at the same time, I don't know why he threw it. He was losing. The scorecards were 79-70, 79-69, and 79-69. So he clearly got dominated on the scorecards. So what do you think? Accident, not an accident?
Oh, man, he got that headbutt in kind of like how Holyfield does, just enough for you to have it be like, maybe it was an accident. But the way that he was losing, again, I just want to reiterate, the pure frustration expressed on Salido's face, I probably have to go that it was somewhat intentional. I mean, he definitely leaned in, but it was hard because I watched it several times to try to see if it really truly was intentional. But I know he was frustrated. I know he's a veteran, so of course, if it was truly intentional, he set it up perfect. But the thing about the headbutt too is like another thing I was really surprised at. Mikey Garcia put on a tremendous performance. He clearly dominated this guy, and his nose was clearly broken. and then to receive some of the boos was just that was just stupid. I mean, this guy, why in the world would he go back in there after a fighter that he's dominated like this? Clearly, to risk, he's a young and up-and-coming fighter, to risk permanent damage on his nose. I mean, I really didn't understand the boos. I thought his performance was phenomenal. Of course, I didn't want it to end in that fashion, but it did. And if anything, it definitely wasn't Garcia's fault. Could he fought on? Yeah, he could have, but why? He had it sold up on the scorecards. He proved his dominance. Why take that type of risk? Especially if Salido did it on purpose. Why give this guy that type of advantage? So in terms of a rematch, yeah, the fight was stopped prematurely. But do we really want to see a rematch in terms of how dominant that Garcia was? That's something I'm juggling with in my mind. Because, we got to the 8th round. Of course, we want to see what was happening. Anything's possible. And the only thing I'll say is this. We know that Salido is a slow starter, and he really starts to turn it up. But I don't know. He was getting dominated pretty bad. And, he had a total of 4 rounds left. Of course, this is boxing. It's the theater of the unexpected. But to be honest, I didn't even see Garcia get stunned in this fight.
Nope.
So at the end of the day, look, he pulled off a slick headbutt, but it didn't do him any favors, and it lost him the belt.
I want to talk about I think one of our favorite fighters, Jelandi Golovkin, defeats Gabriel Rosado, round 7, 246 by TKO. Golovkin was claiming that maybe he was sick. That's why Rosado was able to get some shots in on Golovkin. Did Golovkin look vulnerable And also, Max Kellerman pointed out, Golovkin didn't have the best performance. Could this be a blessing in disguise with opponents wanting to fight this guy? Previously, guys were avoiding Golovkin. Now they see Golovkin a little bit vulnerable. Maybe they want to take a chance and take their chances with Gerlandi. What do you think?
I think so. I mean, a guy like Sergio Martinez, he was probably salivating at that the fact that this guy was not moving his head. And Golovkin doesn't have the best head movement. I mean, we'll admit that. But his technical skills are pretty damn good. They're up there. Just technically, he's one of the top 10 best fighters in the sport, I think. I know that's giving him a lot of credit, but I honestly feel that this guy's just the way he puts his punches together and has to fight or spar, against heavyweights just because the lower weight guys cannot stand his punches even in sparring. And Gabriel Rosales, he had a good game plan. I mean, stick and moves. A lot of people, could say it was running. He did do a fair amount of running, but he did what was going to keep him in the fight, and he landed some solid shots on Golovkin. And if it was true that he was in fact sick, meaning Golovkin, then it's obvious for the performance that he put on. It wasn't nowhere near an A. It was probably a B or B plus or something like that. If even that, I'd even give him a B minus. He didn't look that good in there. I mean, his punches were landing. So, I mean, he ended up doing what he could, but I think so. I mean, guys like Daniel Gill, if he does in fact win his fight, his next fight against Anthony Mundine, again, that's going down at the end of this month. He'd probably fight him, or Sergio Martinez is more than likely probably going to take a fight, especially seeing that the head was not moving.
Yeah, I mean, when I was thinking about that, when I saw him in the ring, I mean, first of all, Golovkin, I was like, wow, am I kind of just exaggerating the accolades? Because it really, I mean, I only saw that guy fight, first on his first appearance, and it was just so phenomenal that I was just like, wow, I just seen signs. There's certain signs that you see in a fighter that that he has potential for greatness, and I guess that's the way that I felt about Golovkin. I tend to disagree a little bit with this fight. One thing that I in terms of course, the fighters who don't move their head, they're not going to stick around too long, or, they're probably going to end up being punch drunk. But in terms of giving the fans a spectacular fight, that's what you're going to continue to get. And this guy, oh my goodness, this guy had the freaking flu fighting like this. I know you gave him a B minus, but I was still impressed. And boxing, he's one of these fighters to me. Of course, you don't appreciate the head movement. You're going to set up for some counter shots, and you're going to last a lot longer as a fighter. But at the same time, this guy Golovkin, he likes to fight. He's one of these guys that doesn't mind to take any punches. You're going to get hit, and this does not freak this guy out. He would much rather take a couple punches to land his own, and you see what happens when he lands his. I mean, I wasn't mad when they stopped the fight because that, his opponent was not going to stop. He was going to keep going, and of course that can be very costly. But in terms of his performance, of course there were some signs for improvement, and I was like, okay, I gotta kind of calm down on this guy until he really fights, some of these elite fighters. But in terms of his willingness to scrap or box or fight sick, take punches to give his own, man, I'm still impressed. That fight didn't do anything to me to be like, I don't think he's that good. I had to calm down in terms of his opponents, because, his opponents have been decent opponents. They haven't been pushovers, but I'm just really looking for him to fight the likes of Martinez or Cesar Chavez Jr. That's going to be great for Golovkin. But, I was still impressed. It's just, especially, he had the flu. Oh, my goodness.
But Max Kellerman is on his case.
That was crazy.
Yeah.
So, and I think the best matchup that we will see out of the guys that can possibly hurt him or give him a good fight, there are only two guys in that weight class. Chavez Jr. maybe, but I doubt it. I'm throwing him out. It's Sergio Martinez because he's able to stick and move and maybe cut him, but we've never seen Golovkin really cut. I think the best matchup, and I hope this happens at the end of the year, Gennady Golovkin and Peter Quillin, man. If him and Kid Chocolate fight, man, I will go nuts. I'll go bananas. I mean, just because of the fact of what we saw Peter Quillin go through against, Hassan Nadam recently. I mean, that was an incredible fight, and he had to drop the guy freaking 6-7 times just to just to win that fight. So I mean, it'll be one hell of a fight if him and Golovkin were to fight. But out of that whole weight class, Martinez and Quillen, I think, are the only two that possibly stand a chance for that one.
We're still trying to get Isaac Valley Flight on the show, still working on that. But I want to talk to you guys just about Kellerman's criticism of Golovkin during that fight. Yeah. It seemed like he was on his case about that head movement. Is it more of this Kellerman is expecting more, or this him thinking maybe Golovkin is a wolf in sheep's clothing? What do you think about that criticism there?
He expected more. I mean, in the last fight that we actually saw, I mean, to put it bluntly, Kellerman was all over his nuts at the end of the last fight, man.
Yeah.
he was just kissing his butt, man. And all of a sudden, he expects this flawless performance, especially when you think about it. They offered Gabriel Rosales a fight at a catchweight, and Rosales said no. He says, I'm a boxer, and back in the days, people would not fight at catchweights. I'll move up all the way to your weight. Even at 154, Rosales is in pretty good shape, but he's still not one of the strongest at 154. So people expected a lot more for a smaller guy to go up there. They expected him to get his clock clean by Golovkin. And if you see his face, he did work him, man. And that's what tripped me out.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. You see his knockout ratio. I mean, Kellerman, in some of his responses, he was acting like, we went to the 12th round and Golovkin just stopped throwing punches. I mean, did you see the shots that he was landing on this guy? I mean, it was tremendous. I mean, you see his face looked like a crimson mask. I mean, that guy was not going to stop. I'm glad that his corner really stopped the fight because he wasn't going to stop at all. And even in the process, I saw him catch Golovkin's with some pretty good shots. And he wasn't going anywhere. That's kind of what I really like about Golovkin. I mean, like I said, it's not good for him to last around a long time, but he's definitely willing to occasionally stop moving his head and really target in on some really hurtful punches. And that's exactly what he's doing. And that's why he got the technical knockout. I mean, with the freaking flu. So I just I think that Max is a little far-fetched in the performance. I could see if it was a boring fight. He didn't win by knockout. He still got a knockout. He still landed clean shots. I didn't see anything in that fight that made other fighters be like, oh, I think I'm eager to fight Golovkin now. I mean, I don't see what. I mean, they might say, yeah, he didn't move his head as much, but he's definitely landed just as many punches, and deadly punches at that.
Exactly. Let's get to our guest now. Isaac Valley Flag has a fight coming up against East Edwards at UFC 156. He joined us now. Thank you for joining us, Isaac. Really appreciate it.
Hey, how's it going, man?
Good. Thank you for joining our show. Really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, no problem. Sorry we kind of got our everything crossed up the other day.
Oh, no worries at all. I guess we'll get right into it. And we were waiting to ask you. We had a long layout since your previous fight. Can you take us through what you've been doing during a layoff between this fight you have coming up in a couple of weeks and your previous fight? Have you been doing extra training? What have you been going through?
Yeah, I mean, I've just been training. I've been working in every single area, and really making some improvements in the areas that I wasn't happy with after my last fight. So, really, all I've been doing is training. I took a little vacation, but even when I was out in California, I was training. So that's pretty much what I was doing the whole time. Just training and trying to stay ready and trying to stay, hoping I was going to get on the card.
Now, Isaac, your last fight was against Jay-Z Cavalcante. I mean, you were a pretty big underdog in that fight, and you pulled off a split decision. How gratifying was that to pull off a fight against such a respected fighter?
Oh man, I was super pumped. It was awesome because number one, I thought I earned a unanimous decision, but it was cool just to beat a guy like that. You know what I mean? Jay-Z's a tough dude, and he's well respected in the sport, especially by fighters. And so to go in there and I feel like put on a second and third round performance like I did was awesome for me.
During this transition time between Strikeforce and the UFC, it's been, I guess, a lot of confusion as to which fighters cross over. When did you get the call knowing that you were being brought over to the UFC? Was that a given once you beat Jay-Z? What was going on with that?
I didn't know anything until, rumors flew around a little bit, and then then I got the call to get ready to fight Ease. So, it's been a short camp. I've had a 4-week camp, and luckily I was already in shape a good amount. So.
Now, your last 2 fights were obviously with Strikeforce. The promotion has obviously ended, but tell us about what it actually, assisted you with, or, maybe even it hurt you. I mean, did you feel that it was huge for your career to gate that exposure?
Yeah, of course, man. I mean, Strikeforce, I like Strikeforce as an organization. I thought it was cool to fight for them. It gave me good exposure. I got to get used to fighting on bigger shows, and it was just a cool time, honestly. I don't think it would hurt anybody to kind of have that transition type of show, where it wasn't quite as big as the UFC, but it's a decent sized show, like the WC was for a lot of guys.
Mm-hmm. You're matched up with East Edwards, a Pride and UFC veteran, very well rounded. How do you see yourself matching up with him? Obviously, a very tough opponent. They're giving you an opponent very difficult. Your first match in the UFC. How do you see you matching up with him?
I honestly, this is something me and Greg and Wink talked about, and both of them were really happy with the matchup because there's things, my whole last camp on the card that got scrapped was preparing for the lefty. So they felt really good about the matchup, and they see some things that we can exploit in his games, and to beat him.
Now, you said you were out training in California. Where exactly were you training, and who were you training with?
I was up at San Luis Obispo training with some jiu-jitsu guys up there. I was out there mostly on vacation, seeing my girlfriend, and then happened to find a good gym to train at. So it was kind of nice.
Now you're back at it. Talk about some of the guys that you train here, just because you're really good friends with Cub Swanson, and as you've seen, I mean, Cub's just flying through the rankings, man.
Yeah, Cub is instrumental in me getting better, and he's the reason why I'm in shape right now, and why I started to get in shape, because I knew he was going to get ready for a camp. So I kind of had to think to myself, well, it's time to get in shape so that you can push Cub a little bit. So luckily, that's kind of what got me into really good shape to start my camp with Eve. Training with a dude like that, was it Clay Guida and Cowboy Cerrone? I mean, you couldn't ask for better training partners as a guy coming into the UFC, You
mentioned Cerrone and Clay Guida. You got fights coming up this weekend, as well as Sean Jordan. And John Dotson's also in the main event. It's a pretty big couple of weeks for Jackson's camp. Have you guys kind of talked about how important these 2 weeks are, or is everybody kind of trained for the individual fights and you kind of take them one fight at a time?
Everybody just kind of takes it one fight at a time, they're all important fights, but, everybody's attitude is a fight's a fight around here, whether it's a big fight or a little fight or whatever it is,
Mm-hmm. Just a couple of more questions, then we'll let you go. The lightweight picture in the UFC is very loaded right now. Tons of talent. Where do you see yourself in the lightweight picture? Would you like to immediately kind of get a couple of high-profile wins to get a title shot, or do you see yourself kind of, taking your time, let the fans get to know who you are, and then eventually earning yourself a number one contendership fight sometime?
I think I'll do whatever I'm asked of, whether it's. So, obviously I'm getting a tough opponent right away. So, they got no problems throwing me to the wolves, which is fine with me. I'm into that, but, of course I'd love to get some more fights after this one and build my name a little bit more, and kind of get fans to know me. But no matter what happens, I'm just going to keep, whether it's tough guys or guys like this, I just keep winning and, working hard and trying to win fights. At the end of the day, that's kind of what it's all about,
Yeah. What current UFC fighter would you like to fight? Obviously, besides for the title, but is there one guy out there that you've always looked forward and I'd love to fight that guy?
Honestly, fighting a dude like Eves is like a dream fight. That's a tough dude that I get to fight right away. I couldn't ask for, I don't think, a better fight as far as a tough opponent. So fighting Eves is cool. I don't know, man. There's a ton of lightweights that I think would be good matchups. I really wanted to fight Cody McKinley before he dropped down to 45, just because he talked shit about one of my teammates. But
well, great, man. Thank you.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no problem. If you have a thought, go ahead and finish it.
Oh, I was just going to say that would have been fun to beat Cody up.
Well, Isaac, thank you very much for joining us. Anything you want to plug? Twitter account, Facebook, anything that you're involved in?
Yeah, of course. Follow me on Twitter. It's at Ike Valley Flag, and just keep looking for me. You know, hopefully this isn't going to be this is going to be a great fight for me, and really kind of make a name for me in the UFC. So.
Great, man. Thank you very much for joining us. I know you're in the midst of a tough training camp. Really appreciate the time for you to join us. Really appreciate it, man.
Thank you, guys. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Ike.
All right,
thank you. That was Isaac Valley Flag. His fight you can catch in a 2-week Super Bowl Saturday. Usually that's the attritional card that always happens right before the big game. That'll be Isaac Valley Flag taking on East Edwards, UFC 156. That card is loaded, guys. It's an unbelievable fight card right before my Niners goes against the Baltimore Ravens. It's
Here
a great card.
Here we go. My Niners.
Of course, man. All day. Come on, man. I got to put it in somehow. At least once. That's right. Who got it better than us? Exactly.
Good luck, man. No, but Isaac Valley Flag, it's definitely good to see a guy come up the rankings the hard way. And, he definitely has. And this fight with Eves Edwards, who I believe, I don't know, I quickly researched this the other day. I can't remember off the top of my head, but has something like 17 fights with the UFC? I mean,
something
I might be
like that.
Incorrect, but it's a bunch of fights that he does have with the UFC. I mean, he goes all the way old school, back to the UFC 30s. So definitely a veteran in the game and a good measuring stick for Isaac. So, and especially this guy. I mean, he's lived in New Mexico for a good 12 years. So basically, he's red and green chili all day, man.
Yeah, no doubt. I don't think I've ever. Maybe I'm probably wrong about this, but it stood out to me how many Jackson's fighters have high-profile fights in the midst of a 2-week span. It's just unbelievable, man.
It's amazing. I mean, the gym's one of the best in the world, obviously, and a lot of these guys, you train against the best. A lot of these guys have most of their training camps here. They'll live at least 6 months out of the year. I mean, guys like John Jones actually live here. Obviously Carlos Condit's from here. Cub Swanson spends time between here and Southern California, so. Yeah, you have that talent here, and especially when you have a big talent pool. And we were talking about Hunter Tucker. I mean, when you're matched up against guys like that, it's just incredible, just overall talent that is going on at that gym.
Mm-hmm. Let's get into, the main card of UFC on Fox, or I guess it's called, it's UFC Fox Saturday, something like that. I forgot the name, but they changed it. Goes down this Saturday, 6 o'clock Mountain Time. The prelims start around 3, with the Facebook prelim starting around 2:30 Mountain Time. The main event, Demetrius Johnson, John Dodson. From a promotional standpoint, it's been made pretty much a big deal that they're not really promoting it as a flyweight title fight. They're just mentioning that pretty much a title's on the line. If this fight turns out to be a stinker, will this, in fact, hurt the division at all? I mean, this is really the first high-profile fight for the flyweights on a national scale like this. I know there was a pay-per-view fight featuring, Demetrius Johnson winning the title, but this is on national TV. If this fight sucks for any chance, I mean, could this be a huge setback? Or, this is fights and these things happen. Fighters make fights. Is there a lot of pressure on these guys to deliver an exciting matchup?
I think so, man. Just because of the fact you're going in there not knowing what to expect. Both of these guys these might be the two fastest guys in MMA, man. Just the hand speed that both of these guys have is incredible. The athleticism that they have is amazing. So these guys don't necessarily, the division isn't completely riding on them, but for this big of a fight, for 125 pounds, and as you mentioned, they haven't even mentioned that in these commercials that they're showing during the NFL playoffs. They're not saying that they're flyweights. I guess they just don't want people to know that they're the smaller weights. And maybe they see it. Maybe most people see it as a turnoff. But, there is fairly a large amount of riding on these two guys.
Now, you've interviewed John Dodson. That interview's on youtube.com/lowblow505. You would spend some time with him. I saw an interview with Demetrius Johnson saying that whenever you hear about John, it's about him being a great athlete. He can dunk a basketball. He's Mr. Perfect. He can do anything, but you never hear about anything about his fighting ability. You spend some time with John. Does that bug him? I mean, does he want to be considered more if he can get a vibe off of him? Do you think, does he care about what people think of him in terms of him being a great athlete, or do you think he wants to prove himself more as a championship contender and a champion?
Yeah, he wants to prove himself more. In the interview that I did have with him, he says, "Yeah, the UFC title would be cool, but I want to be known as the guy with the fastest hands. I want that title. I want to be the guy that's the most athletic. I want that title." So basically, he wants the complete recognition. And what he feels what it bothers him the most is what people calling his antics after post fights. You could say. Childish, but in the interview he did mention that, you know what, he's like, this is like me winning the lottery. He says, I'm living out my dream and people don't understand that, so that's why I act the way I do like a kid. He's like, I'm living my dream, seriously. So I think that's what bothers him the most, but this is his chance to prove himself. He's a little less than a 2-1 underdog, so I mean it's a big fight for him, and New Mexico MMA history. The guy's born and raised in the Albuquerque area, so pretty huge fight locally, man.
It is. Co-main event, Quentin Jackson taking on Glover Teixeira. Quentin Jackson's been very vocal about his dislike for the UFC, everything that's gone on. I mean, this is a laundry list of problems from, the Reebok sponsorship to other things. In terms of Jackson and this fight specifically as a style matchup, Teixeira is pretty much known as a banger. But he does train, out of Chuck Liddell's old camp with the Pit in California. And we heard rumors, I have, at least on the internet and some interviews, that Teixeira is looking for the takedown on Quentin Jackson here. Do you think Teixeira can pull off the takedowns on Quentin Jackson, kind of make it a boring fight just to get that signature win over Quentin? Or do you think Glover would take his chances standing and try to, get the knockout and risking himself getting KO'd by Quentin Jackson?
No, I think he's going to take it to the ground. I think he's going to try to smother Quentin Jackson and ultimately finish it. I don't know if it's going to what type of stoppage is going to be, but I think Glover is going to go in there and try to go for the takedown and drop some elbows, man, just because Quentin still has power, and he has one-punch knockout power still, but a little more than 2.5 underdog, so a lot of people are betting on Teixeira, so it'll be a pretty interesting fight. It'll be even more interesting to see what happens if Quentin actually wins this. Does he come back? Who does he fight next? Teixeira hasn't lost in 7 years, man. So
I don't think Quentin Jackson comes back. I think he takes a couple more fights outside of the UFC and then he retires. I just think he's lost the passion for fighting.
Win or lose, you think?
Win or lose?
Yeah.
Good question. I think he can get that'll give him some leverage with Bellator. I think especially if they do lose Eddie Alvarez, they'll need a new guy to kind of push. And I think even though Quentin Jackson and King Mo kind of squashed their beef, I think they're not that good of friends. I'm sure they can fight each other. I think Bellator needs a marquee matchup to kind of headline this supposed pay-per-view that Bellator wants to have in the spring. So even if win or lose, Quentin Jackson still has name cachet, but I just think his passion's kind of not there, to be honest. I don't know. I just don't see it in his eyes anymore. Sad because I think Quentin Jackson, motivated, can be one of the top 5 light heavyweights in the world, but I just don't see that passion in him.
Yeah, I agree. But the next fight is, I think, the fight that everyone's going to be really interested to see, and who knows, might even be the fight that saves the card with Anthony Pettis and Donald Cerrone. I think Will's actually going to love that fight, man, with the two guys, because I think they're going to bang. They're going to stand there and bang.
Yeah, this is a fight of the year candidate easily. I think the question on everybody's mind is, these guys have had long layoffs, and certainly they have not been as active as in 2012 as they would like to be. The question is for these guys, the winner, do in fact they get a title shot? I mean, Gilbert Melendez is he's number 2, so he's ahead of them easily. And then you have to consider Eddie Alvarez. I mean, he's rumored with this fight in April, if in fact he does sign a UFC contract. I mean, these guys probably have to fight once, maybe twice to get what they want here. I mean, this is a big-time fight, big-time implications. Who do you think has the advantage? Anthony Pettis pretty much got dominated by Clay Guida with wrestling. We've seen Cerrone pretty much get picked apart with the leg kicks by Nate Diaz. Who do you think you see taking in this kind of WEC revival fight?
It's a toss-up, to be honest, I think, man. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but Cowboys, and I don't know if Anthony Pettis has the power to knock him out. I mean, obviously a leg kick to the face. I mean, something that he did last time to Joe Luazon. It is possible, but it's a toss-up fight for this. I think these guys are going to bang the whole time. It helps Pettis, I think, and it pumps him up more that he's fighting. I mean, not too far from Wisconsin, his home state. So I mean, he's going to have a huge following there. But Donald Cerrone. I mean, this fight is his fight to get back into the title contention. He gave one away, I honestly think, against Nate Diaz by not taking that fight to the ground. So I think Donald Cerrone has a lot more to prove than Anthony Pettis. It's a huge fight for both guys, huge implications, especially since guys are coming off of recent losses over the past year. So very huge fight. If I had to pick, man.
Yeah, it's tough. I know.
Cerrone, but I wouldn't be surprised if Pettis pulls off some crazy head kick, man, and might end it early. So
sure,
I'm gonna go Pettis.
Yeah, I think I just go Cerrone to beat Concharian, but I think the fight's really close. It's like the main event. It's really close. I think I like Demetrius Johnson in that main event, but I certainly think it's razor thin. Also, the first fight to lead off the card, Eric Koch, who's won 3 in a row against Ricardo Lamas, who had a dominating victory over Hatsuyoki. So this card is really, really loaded. Don't forget about the prelims featuring Clay Guida against Hatsuyoki. Clay Guida is trying to redeem himself over that with the fight with Gray Maynard. Lots of controversy, but he's looking to bounce back. Also, Sean Jordan is on the card taking on Mike Russo. So really just a loaded card. Ryan Bader taking on Vladimir Maishenko. Really, if I think, the UFC and Fox, we were just the matchmaking for these cards in particular, really, I think came through again. A really compelling card. I think this will be worth your time, man, to check out.
All right. Good.
Cool. I think we have 3 more minutes left. Is there anything you guys want to discuss before we get out of here?
Yes, one thing, and I think it made me laugh. I don't know if it made you guys laugh, but when Mikey Garcia got caught with that headbutt and he went to the corner, did you guys hear what Robert Garcia told him, his brother?
I don't think so.
Your nose, bro! Oh my God, Mom's gonna be so pissed at us. You know what I mean? That's what it cracked me up. Like the typical big brother response, man. Freaking hilarious.
That's funny. Did you guys happen to catch any of Bellator last week? I know we're on during Bellator the first hour. Did you catch any of the last hour, the King Mo special? Did you guys watch any of that?
Not catch any of that, man.
No,
okay.
I did. What about that Alistair Overeem documentary? Did you catch that?
I did. I posted that on the Low Blow Rundown.
Yeah,
on the Low Blow Facebook page. Yeah.
So how do you feel about the comeback in terms of the performance-enhancing drugs? You think he's going to stay clear from this, or how are you feeling about this?
Yeah, I think because the testing, honestly, in the commissions is kind of a joke. You'd be stupid to kind of test positive again. I think because his testosterone levels are so high, it is just so ridiculous. As long as he just plays the game correctly, he should be fine. I just think with Alistair, I've always given him the benefit of the doubt in his entire career until that test happened. It's kind of with Lance Armstrong. I mean, I don't like to play conspiracy theorists and condemn guys without seeing hard evidence of them failing the test. But with Alistair, it's certainly take off the luster of his career. Always looking over his accomplishments is kind of taking the bloom off the rose a little bit, certainly. But you saw the documentary. I've seen all the episodes; they're really well done. You saw the whole thing well.
Yeah, I saw the whole thing, man. I'm just really surprised that the arm wrestling didn't take you back. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think Corey, you got to watch that, man. That whole arm wrestling thing's online now. It's him arm wrestling Bob Sapp, Mark Hunt,
wow.
Sakuraba in there. It's insane. There's a tug of war which they did not show in the Reem documentary. So it's insane. The Japanese television it's nuts, man. But the Reem documentary, I think, is easily the best video production in the sport. I even put it up against anything UFC or Bellator does. I think what those guys have done is great. If you have not seen it, it's at Alistair Overeem's official website. They have every single episode of the Reem documentary that goes back all the way to his Pride days, Strikeforce, and now to UFC. Pretty incredible stuff. You have 2 hours to kill. Couldn't spend a better time doing that. I think that's a wrap up our.
What I was gonna say, do these guys play dodgeball out in Japan too? I mean, what the hell's going on over there,
They're
man?
crazy, man.
It sounds like the Road Rules Real World Challenge, man. That's what that actually sounds like.
Yeah, basically with MMA fighters. Yeah, no doubt. I'm going to wrap up our show, guys. Again, contact our show through lowblow505@gmail.com, Fight Fans Radio, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Ustream. Also, YouTube for all the latest interviews we have at youtube.com/lowblow505. For Jorge and Will, I'm Justin. We'll see you next time.
Peace.